originally chosen Eric Lewin, author of the Pete the Cat series, for my author study after seeing my son's kindergarten teacher integrate a lot of his work into her class. Until I went to the Children's Literature Conference at UNLV over this past weekend, and when Laura Purdy Salas was talking, I couldn't help but lean up in my seat listening to her the whole time. Every piece of information she provided was amazing. She not only spoke about her own life and her own work, but she also spoke about many of her favorite poetry authors throughout her presentation. She was extremely enthusiastic and seemed to be very genuine. I was very drawn to her style of writing and how she just kind of sits back and watches her family and all the students react day in and day out, taking everything in to use in her writing. Just a little bit of background on Laura. She was the youngest of 4 girls. Her older sisters taught her to read at the age of 4. She stated in her presentation that she didn't think that teaching was intentional, but since she was always the student in the classroom as her sisters played pretend school, it was just bound to happen sooner or later. And while living in Florida, her parents often told her to go outside and get some fresh air. She would in fact go outside, but books in hand, she'd climb up a tree or hide under the trampoline reading away in the fresh air. She always wanted to be a veterinarian. She never thought herself to be an author. In college, she took a creative writing class where she fell in love with writing and her husband. She graduated with an English degree and had 2 girls, Annabelle and Maddie. After teaching 8th grade English for 2 years, she rediscovered her love for children's literature. In her presentation, she showed us a picture of her daughter after she had 2 of her front teeth pulled. Her daughter had placed straws in the holes where the teeth were, and that reminded her of a walrus. She quickly went home and wrote a cute poem about the walrus, but her daughter was not enthused. After she wrote that poem, she started to volunteer at all of the chaperone activities and all of the outside monitoring schedules she could, so she could watch the students and relate them to animals. And this is where one of her first poetry books came into play, which was Stampede, Poems to Celebrate the Wild Side of School. Laura not only writes poetry, but she also writes non-fictional books. She has quite a collection of the non-fiction books under her belt. The newest one that was just released on March 31st of this year was Water Can Be, which is an addition to Leaf Can Be, which was released in 2012. A few of her poetry books that I read were Books Speak, Poems About Books, The Stampede that I mentioned earlier, Picture Yourself Writing Poetry, Using Photos to Inspire Writing. This is more of an upper grade book, focusing probably like 3rd grade to 8th grade, just to get students inspired to write poetry. A Leaf Can Be and Water Can Be. She gave many examples of ways to use poetry in the classroom and ways to engage students in poetry. My favorite activities were the book spine poems, which is having the students go into the library and pick out about 5 to 8 different books that they like the titles on. Could be less if stock is not available. And then stack them on top of each other, and the titles going obviously from top to bottom make a poem. And the other activity was that she loved having students do was the paint chip poetry, which is she goes to the hardware store and gets the paint chip samples and has the students write a poem then. For older students, she has them use the names of the colors on the chips for their title. And then for the younger students, she has them either write about the color or something of the color. This encourages them to write more so because it's not as overwhelming as looking at a big blank sheet of letter-sized paper that you would normally give them to do a writing assignment. The last 2 of these books, Water Can Be and The Leaf Can Be, could also be poetry and nonfiction. And the next set of books were all non-fictional books, but she adds some fun poetry songs to them. And this would be a great way to have younger students remember certain ideas of the unit you're teaching. Home on Earth, a song about Earth's layers. Move It, Work It, a song about simple machines. Are You Living, a song about living and non-living things. From Beginning to End, a song about life cycles. And the final set of books could be used in such a wide array of different things. I see myself sharing them to younger students to get them intrigued with a certain unit. And for older students, each book of these is filled with like little fun, silly facts about all the different topics throughout. And some of them could even be used within a unit, like the daisy and the maple tree ones could be used as a supplement in a science unit about photosynthesis. And a few can be referred back to throughout a unit to revisit topics for background knowledge while transitioning through the unit. Desert Thirsty Wonderlands, from mealworm to beetle following the life cycle, from seed to maple tree, from seed to daisy. Oceans Underwater Worlds, Rainforest Gardens of Green. And I also put a leaf can be and water can be too, because those could also fall into this category. And like I've stated, most of the texts are grade levels between kindergarten and second, except for the Picture Yourself Writing Poetry, which is a little bit higher level grades. And while visiting her website, she does in-person visits, and she also does Skypes, and she offers different ways to help fund them. And she didn't really talk about cost, so I'm not sure if there's a difference in cost there with the Skype or the in-person. But I really like the information throughout her website, and she gave different activities to get the students' creativity flowing. I suggest you pick up some of her books for your classroom soon. You don't know what you're missing.